Hi, and good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, I suppose, if you're in the United States. Good evening if you're somewhere across in Australia or Singapore, or I don't know what time of day it is if you're watching the recording. This is In Conversation with Graeme Codrington, and it's great to have you along for another one of my conversations with people I think you need to listen to. As we're heading out of the crisis period of our response to COVID, and we're kind of understanding that this is our new normal for now. I know it's a cliche, but for the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to be completely disrupted. And then maybe the world never goes back to the way it was. Okay, so what do we do about it? And I've got a whole group of people that I really would like to hear from, and I hope you'll enjoy listening in on those conversations. So today we have Sean Weafer. And Sean, you and I go back a long way. We probably met each other through the Professional Speakers Association in the UK many, many years ago. I think we've shared the stage once or twice around the world. But it's really been fantastic to kind of watch what you've done with your passion around developing leaders and helping people to do better in working around coaching. So I'm not sure there's much more of an introduction. You can give us more details if you need to. But Sean, an expert in coaching with years of experience, not just in doing coaching, but in helping leaders and coaches to understand what coaching actually is. So it's not just and I do have a little bit of cynicism around some of the way people do coaching. I know you do as well, Sean. And so that's really what I wanted to discuss. So Sean, welcome. Thanks for being in conversation. How's lockdown treating you in Ireland?
It's good, Graeme. It's good. The weather is 25 degrees, so we're enjoying ourselves. It's the one thing that's helped us get through these last couple of months of being locked down in our homes as we are at the present time, although it's starting to gradually ease up, but it's still pretty strong over here right now.
But you say it's good weather. I'm assuming you can only look out of the window. I mean, Ireland's got quite a hectic lockdown, don't you?
We've got a strong lockdown. We were originally limited to about 2 kilometers for exercise, allowed out just to go to grocery stores and pharmacies. That's it. In the last couple of weeks, they've made it 5 kilometers. And they've opened up gardening centers and DIY stores because that's what everybody was doing before lockdown.
There's definitely going to be some humor available to us after this, is when we all compare what each nation considers to be essential services, right? DIY and garden centers. That's classic.
Yeah, and there's been a run on paint. You can't get paint anywhere. Although I can understand it, because early on in this lockdown, my youngest son commented on how I spent 4 hours power washing the patio at the back. And the reason, and I'm not much of a gardener, but the reason I did it was just the simple satisfaction of actually doing something and seeing an immediate result, as opposed to the trauma and the flux that was going on in the business world at the time.
And that's a good point. And as my wife pointed out to me early on in the lockdown, she said, all of those things you've said, I'll do it when I've got time. Now we'll know if you were lying to me all of those times. And I'll be honest, in case Jane ever watches this, I haven't done any of it.
Well, I'm impressed, because I had done the hedges, I've done the garden, I've done it more, to be honest, more for me than I was actually getting the job done, to be fair. But things have started to change now, so there's more of a focus around the business again.
No, well, exactly. And well, in fact, that's a great lead in, because that is in fact what's happening, isn't it? Is that as we begin to realize we can't just grit our teeth and power through a few weeks of this virus. This is with us at least the rest of this year, probably most of next year. Not full lockdown, that's not what we're saying, but definitely deep disruption to the way we live and work. And then after that, there's going to be stuff that never comes back again. And so I really was looking forward to having this conversation because it seems to me as if a lot of leaders, a lot of managers in businesses are maybe confronted for the first time really with saying, I have no idea what to do. I haven't trained for this. I wasn't prepared for this. Nobody has experience. It's such we're in such flux all the time. I don't really know how to respond. And there isn't a textbook to read. And my guess would be that in this situation, I know coaching is probably always important. It feels like it might be even more important now. Is that been your experience? And maybe you can even take us a step back and give us a sense of what you believe coaching is for and what it's about.
Yeah. Well, I think probably for the first 2 months, nobody was doing anything because I think everybody, as you quite rightly said, was in a state of shock, really. And you had a situation where organizations were trying to restructure their operations to ensure they had people working from home. And then they ran into a whole series of other problems around productivity, monitoring, people being isolated with, their parents or their kids or whatever, and trying to adapt to this whole new environment. So I'd say for the last couple of months, there's just been this state of shock. And a good thing about, attempting to sell products and services, if you focus on people's emotions, you do a lot better. And you do not want to try and sell to somebody when the primary emotion is shock, fear, and anxiety. But I have noticed the last couple of weeks, things have started to change a little. I think people are starting to realize that this new normal, which is this overused cliche, has come in. And I think a couple of things, I think from the perspective of coaching, I've had several inquiries started to come in again. And I think the reason being is from two perspectives. I mean, the sort of people that I specialize in working with tend to be partners in professional services companies, financial companies, legal companies, equity banks, that sort of thing. And also then VPs and C-suite people who are of engineering, finance, legal, sales backgrounds. So typically people who are experts who need to become influencers, right? And I think that has something to do with the way leadership is about to change, or indeed was changing, but really has to change as a result of this, what we call new blended managed environment we're now in. So, you mentioned this thing could go on for a year. I suspect the changes over the next 12 months will not go away. I have a number of CFOs who are clients of mine, and they're already talking about, we don't need the real estate space that we have. You're seeing Twitter say that, everybody can work from home from now on. We don't need to have anything.
And Sean, that's a really great point that you make there. And I kind of hinted at it in my intro, and I'm glad that you're on the same page, because I've been trying to get my clients to realize all of the disruptions that were coming your way, everything you've heard at every conference you've been at for the last 5 years, all of that is still coming. In fact, some of it might be coming faster.
Yeah.
The digital, the remote, the mobile, the cloud-based workplace, I think those trends will be accelerated. 6 months ago, you were probably able to ignore it because you had your systems and structures in place and you could protect yourself from this wave of change. Now COVID has basically just unearthed everything. And as you say, it's not just COVID we're needing to think about. It's this full-on disruption of the 2020s in every way.
It is. I mean, if I take it myself as a case in point, I mean, I had quite a busy practice working with people face-to-face here, because we have a lot of companies based here in Dublin, like Indeed.com, and you'd LinkedIn, and you've got eBay, you've got Facebook, you've got Google. So a lot of my tech clients would have been local, so I would have met them to have coaching sessions. That was changing over the last 12 months, where I was moving more online anyway, so there was that gradual thing. But realistically, I never really expected to have to go completely online, although that ultimately was the plan. So, I mean, over the last 12 months, my clients now reach out to Austin, San Diego, Toronto, St. Petersburg, quite diverse. And we've moved to a full-on virtual coaching environment, or live coaching environment on a virtual platform. And you know what? There's been absolutely no drop in productivity or engagement. Now, I think the reason for that is that I have a very structured form of coaching, which I call G2S, which means global to specific. So we look at the big picture stuff, we break it down to the smallest things, and we work systematically over a series of sessions to accomplish very specific outcomes. And I think in your earlier, your introduction, you mentioned you had some concerns about some form of coaching, and I think you would be right. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are coaching using pretty nebulous models, or it's very conversational based, as opposed to structured and objective based. Now, there's a place for coaching and in conversations and coaching, no question about that. But I think if you don't have a specific methodology and a process that delivers measured and measurable results for people, you can't show the actualization or the thresholds that have been passed, so that when somebody comes out of a coaching intervention, they're very different from where they were when they started. So in my case, a lot of my work is around helping guys like that with influential communications, how they're building their brand, how they're motivating their team, how they're engaging stakeholders, how they're working with clients, and then performance around that space. So there's one thing about the coaching piece, which is professional coach delivering that, and there's absolutely a need for that more and more now, and will continue on two levels. One, you need to support the executive because he or she is feeling isolated. They're feeling lack of clarity. They're struggling with certain perceptions which may not be very positive. Their performance is falling off, and they're living in a completely different environment where communications has fundamentally changed how they need to work with people. Mm-hmm. And so all of those areas would fall into a coaching process that I would do with them. But then there's the other level of that, which is where they themselves need to learn that command and control leadership does not work in a virtual world.
Yeah.
We have to move to being influential, coaching-orientated communicators that are now facilitators of our teams, motivators of our teams, because they're suffering exactly the same as the leaders are suffering. They're isolated, they're on their own, the motivation is being impacted on, their ability to be resilient is affected. So in a sense, there's two elements of a job to help us work effectively in the modern world. That is, one, providing coaching for the leaders to support them to remain productive and performance focused, and two, helping them on the journey to be better communicators with proper structures whereby they can coach and mentor and develop their own teams around their productivity.
And Sean, this is in fact one of the reasons why I wanted to chat to you. I've got a number of people who do coaching in my network, but my experience of your approach to coaching is really what I wanted to get across and chat about, but also hopefully expose people to. Because I agree with you entirely that actually the picture of a coach is probably the better picture for leaders going forward. You know, when you ask people what is a leader, the easiest way to describe it is to imagine their analogies. So there's the general in the army, and that's a particular model of leader. You know, there's a captain of a sports team, and that's a particular model of leader. For many of us, there's a head teacher at a school, which normally brings flashbacks, you know, and that's a particular model of leader. But almost all of the models, when you ask people to list the models that they have, the mental pictures they have of leaders, almost all of them are command and control. And as you say, especially in the professional services where you work, most people who become professionals, whether it's engineers or accountants or lawyers or whatever, that actually suits their personality and their mindset as well, because they're experts, they're professionally trained, they are sought after by everybody else for their opinions and their insights, and they're expected to be directive and deliberate.
Yeah.
And most of them, in fact, almost none of them did any sales training at varsity, any client management training. None of them did any emotional intelligence courses at all. And so they might be brilliant at their job as a professional. And now, because of the way professional services has changed in the last decade, they do client management, they do sales, they do team dynamics and team building, they do coaching of other staff. And all of this really, I think it stresses them out. Anybody kind of my age in professional services and as a professional is struggling. Yeah. And what I've seen from you is that coaching is both a thing you do, but it's also a model of leadership you try and give to people. Have I understood it correctly? I don't want to be putting words in your mouth. No, that started as a question and ended as a mini as a mini statement. But have I understood correctly what you're trying to do in your coaching approach?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. I think, you know, not just in professional services, but also in the tech sector where I work a lot with senior leaders. It's exactly as you've explained there, that many of them have accomplished leadership positions simply because they are expert at what they do. And a command and control process works well for them because command and control is based on your expertise being fed down in a hierarchical structure, okay? But for many of these organizations, they now become matrix based. So you don't have direct lines of reporting in some cases. Now you have distributed organizations whereby we're all working virtually. So again, you don't have that direct command and control type approach. And the definition of modern leadership is really a leader is a person who can create the environment in which their people can excel. Now, that's a very interesting definition to bear in mind. And you will have heard the expression about service-based leadership or servant-based leadership, where the job of the leader is not to lead from the front, but to support the people to be able to do what they do. And interestingly, I was reading something recently about the concept of the alpha male, or the alpha in groups like wolves and so on. In fact, it's been completely misread from the original researcher's work, and he said it himself. I've seen a few interviews he's done. The alpha is actually the person who provides the most support, so that the tribe or the clan or the pack
else can do what they
provide, and actually it nurtures the weaker members, as well as initiating the hunt and leading the direction and everything else that goes. So what's really interesting is this. So the area that I focus on is helping experts become these highly trusted influencers, so that what you've got is more engagement, more connection, more influence that you would otherwise get in a command and control type model. And actually, if you look at the military model as well, like if you look at defense forces here, for example, when you deal with special forces who are the cutting edge of the military, there's very little command and control applied in that environment. You know, it's a mutual support of each other to bring their particular expertise. So the synergy is bigger than the individual. And that's what good coaching is about. If I provide coaching for you or anybody else, it's about the synergy that allows me to help you to look at things differently, overcome challenges because the perception is different, be a sounding board, be a challenger, be somebody who holds you accountable, be somebody who puts you into a structure and then supports you with skill sets you don't have, to allow you to be more than you would have accomplished on your own. And so that coaching model that I might apply as a professional coach to someone is exactly the kind of leadership that they need to be applying with their people. And here's the reason why. If you are indispensable to your team, you'll never get promoted. Right? Successful leaders need to be completely indispensable because they can empower people.
Sorry, just hang on. I had to think about that for a second before I realized the genius of that statement. Say it again in case everybody else is as slow as I am.
Okay. If you are indispensable to your team, you'll never get promoted.
And I mean, that's so brilliant when you say it, because part of you says, but hang on, I want to be indispensable to my team. I want my team to rely on me because then I'm secure in my position in the team. But flip side is, you're not going anywhere, buddy. You're exactly where you need to be.
Because you're indispensable to the team, right?
Brilliant.
So I think that's a really good example that while expertise has its place and will get you to a certain level, when you start working at sort of senior VP level, C level, professional partner, equity partner level, in any of these organizations, your expertise is less important than your ability to be able to facilitate and synergize the team to accomplish all the work that needs to be done. So, and you made a point earlier about, sales and client management. I mean, traditionally, in a lot of traditional legal, accounting, that sort of play, they hate the word sales. Perfectly understandable because of the old-fashioned stereotype with it. But the word selling means to be of service, right? And client management, they live to do that. Their job is to feed the little fishes. And if they can't do that effectively, then the practice suffers, But the good news is that when I work with them around, say, just sales influence, never mind leadership influence, it's not about pitching what you do. It's about identifying a challenge, offering a solution that's of value to somebody, monetizing it, and then looking after the relationship. It's about being an influencer, not a pitcher.
Yeah. So I'm guessing then that part of what you are looking for in terms of success is that you are seeing somebody that you are coaching turning into a coach themselves.
Not in every case. It depends on the objectives that the individual identifies.
Okay. Yeah.
So, for example, they might be looking at a situation where they want to build their personal brand within the wider industry, within the organization, or their professional brand, so they have more influence within the organization, or they're recognized for what they're doing. So that isn't necessarily about becoming a coach, but it is about becoming a better networker, a better conversationalist, a better speaker, because that's what builds brand for you. And sometimes in the case of where they want to drive team performance or team revenues, then yes, then you definitely look at, well, the relationships they have with individual members, how they strengthen them, or if they want to build their team or want to look to move on themselves. It might be issues about how do we strengthen a succession path for your people. And part of that, well, let me give you another example, maybe it's more relevant to the current scenario. Many of these guys are managing, gentlemen and ladies, are managing distributed teams now, remote teams.
Yeah. Never
had that experience before, right? So you can't tell me what to do because I'll switch off the Zoom meeting and I'm done here, okay? But if you engage me, I mean, a very simple example of, you know, agree with me a work objective for the week. Then walk me through, like, then ask, let's say you're the team member, then ask Graeme to tell you how he's going to do that. Don't tell him, ask him. Because for two things, you're going to raise up his ability to deliver because he starts to look to his own internal resources, and then allow him to come. If he can't answer all of the questions, at least come half the way. So he has ownership. I talk about coaching being a shared ownership model. You know, collaboration, connection, co-creative in that respect. And then what you do is, if you know there are things that, if I know there's things you're missing, I would then say, well, can I make a suggestion, Graeme? Have you considered calling Mary and having a chat with her about that, for example? Or what if you were to actually sequence that report and have it done half this month and half next month? Would that work for you? Or would you be comfortable sending me the presentation so I can spec it for you? So it's a collaboration. It's not a dictation.
Yeah.
So while you may not be training them specifically in coaching, although we are launching a coaching academy in September in the G2S model that I designed many years ago, the thing is that you empower them to learn the skills needed to empower their teams and individuals working at a distance.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So listen, those of you who are live with us, if you live on the webinar now, not watching the recording later, you have the benefit of actually being able to ask questions directly to Sean. You kind of preempted my question, but maybe let me ask it anyway, because there might be more insights. What would your coaching do now to help focus a leader on this virtual environment? Is there anything specific that people could be working on in terms of some of the things that you've talked about around influence? Is it a very different space to be in a virtual space, or do you just kind of go deeper into some of the things you were already doing?
Well, I think it's a different space in many respects because, you know, I wrote an article there recently, which is on my LinkedIn, called "Are You Zoomified?" Right? Which talks about the degree of fatigue that we suffer from doing Zoom meetings. And one of the main reasons for that is that we're trying to function and engage with people in a two-dimensional rather than a three-dimensional environment.
Yeah. So
our brain is still focused on three-dimensional environment, so it's not getting the signals it needs, so we work harder to connect with people.
Yeah.
If you're a directive kind of person and you're directing the people to do things, you're going to be more exhausted than most. Right. Whereas if you can learn the skills, you know, that we teach obviously around influencing through questions or suggestions, working with the personality, using more structured approaches, you can accomplish even more productivity actually doing it at a distance. So a lot of my work working with clients at the moment is less about brand building, for example, or developing a lot of the internal corporate stuff. So for example, in the corporate stuff, I talk about the 4 Ps of the corporate world, right? You got to build a profile. You got to position it, you get promoted, and then you have to manage the politics because you got promoted over somebody else, right? That sort of stuff, to a certain extent, has gone. You still need to show you're being productive, and you still need to make sure your stakeholders know you're being productive. But how you're doing it via Zoom or Teams or whatever platform you're using does require a different skill set. So one of the things that I am doing is helping them recognize and work with the personality types that are showing up on screen that maybe they never noticed before, or using questions and influencing skills, or, you know, different things, that techniques. I was with a gentleman yesterday, head of sales based in Toronto, and he needed feedback on how to handle potential confrontation, both between himself and one of his team members, and then between 2 of his team members, how he needed to handle them in a way that didn't exacerbate the conflict. So that's something that we would have addressed. And even though we still have very specific objectives for the coaching program, the great thing about having a system as we do is the fact that we can step out of that, have a conversation, deal with a particular issue, and then go back to the original objectives again.
Right. Right. Nice. So I'm looking at the time. We haven't had any specific questions come in. Still the opportunity, if you are watching us live, to drop questions. If you're not watching us live, but you want to get hold of Sean, just have it wherever you found this video. I'll put Sean's website address. Just search for him on YouTube. He's got a great YouTube channel. On LinkedIn, he'll accept all requests. I think you're like me, kind of just accept as the request.
I'm a very open guy, Graeme. What can
Exactly. No, exactly as you should be. But Sean, I know that for a while now you have been working on taking some of the work that you've been doing in terms of coaching and turning it into a system, turning it into a model that you can maybe help other people to roll it. And you mentioned an academy or something. Is that coming up later in 2020?
Well, actually, I designed a specifically unique coaching system called G2S back in 1997. That's how long I've been doing this. And I've used that ever since. And G2S means global to specific. So we look at the big global pictures that you want to address, and then we break it down to the specifics to ensure that they actually happen. And it's a systematic, measured process that guarantees results every time. But because it's a methodology and a process, we can also train people to be able to use it. So in September, we're opening an academy which will train professional coaches, people who want to be professional coaches and run and practice, or indeed managers, senior executives who need to learn a real skill set and real methodology and a process around coaching that delivers measured outcomes. So a lot of that was originally in my original book way back in 2001 called The Business Coaching Revolution, which has been re-edited and will be released as G2S Coaching later this year.
Well, that leads nicely, and we do have some questions now, so that leads nicely into a question that Frank's put in, which is really about the industry. And he says, do you expect any significant changes to coaching business models? And I'm guessing we could add in coaching methodologies even that have been around to date. I'm guessing there might have been a few people who swore blind you couldn't do coaching online, and always said it had to be face-to-face. I know a few doctors who have had to change their tune about telemedicine in the last few weeks. So that might be one simple answer. But maybe for somebody, I think we do have some people who clearly know their coaching stuff here. Have you thought through whether there might be some deep changes to the methodology because of COVID?
Yeah, I think when people are in position, I mean, if we look at mostly coaching was delivered either through early days, kind of tele-coaching by phone, or it was done face-to-face. I mean, I think the fact that we are now become used to working on a Zoom basis is significant for professional coaches because it opens up a global marketplace for doing the work that you do. I think the difference will be is that clients will be more demanding about measured outputs from coaching. And when you're working with models like GROW or T-GROW, which are still pretty nebulous models, it's very difficult to demonstrate what specifically is going to happen. So I think having a more specific model that demonstrates ROI, that demonstrates change, not just to the individual who's doing the coaching with you, to the client, but also to the sponsor, which is the company, the organization that's paying for it as well, that will become more important. I think there will definitely be a greater demand for coaching. And good coaches, specifically because as we continue to operate in this world, leaders operating remotely, and I'm seeing it myself every day with the clients I work with, they're facing issues of motivation, they've issues around well-being, they're facing issues around isolation, which is an issue. I need to be very clear here, though, because there's a big difference between being a coach and being a counselor or a therapist. So we need to be very clear about the dividing line between the two, but often a good conversation that keeps them focused, keeps them accountable, and makes them feel that they're going where they go. And the fact that they can have a conversation around the challenge that they're having and find a solution through the synergy of working with their coach is hugely beneficial and impacts not just on them, but on what they can pass on to their teams as well. So I think there's definitely going to be more need for more rigorous coaching approaches, more ROI, and I think people are going to be far more comfortable now working online as we are now.
Nice. One more question. And Chanda says here, hi, Shauna, this is Chanda from India. One question I have is, in challenging times, business unit heads have all pressure on the numbers. Exactly right. I mean, that's what I've been seeing. And that's what you said, that's what the last 2 weeks have been about. Keep the business going, focus on the numbers, productivity is king, and all those things. What could be some productive ways for these senior managers to manage their teams? In other words, now that and this is, in fact, Chana, thank you. That's a lovely way for us to kind of bring the conversation full circle and towards a close. This is where I sense we are, is that people are realizing, hang on. We've been sprinting for a few weeks. This is actually a marathon. We've gone out way too fast here. We're going to burn out. We're going to burn our teams out. We can't keep going at this pace. I've got to shift gears here. Let's use that as a platform to kind of give us your final nuggets of wisdom in this webinar, Sean. What would you say to leaders is the most important thing they should be doing with their teams right now?
I think the most important thing for leaders to be doing with their teams is offer them clarity. I think I have a thing called the 6C model, which I designed many years ago, which explains how we use it in coaching. And very briefly, it's context, which is your environment, clarity, which is your focus, control, confidence, communication, and competence. So in the current environment, we have our context, a highly reactive situation. In order to be productive, we need to move from reactive to proactive. Okay. The only way that's going to happen is if we as leaders and managers can get more clarity or focus for our individual members. And what I mean by that is we're able to help them define what it is they need to do in order to maintain the productivity of themselves and the company or the team. And most importantly, why is it important for them to do that? In other words, what's their motivation to get something done? That could be financial reward. It could be recognition. It could be a sense of well-being, whatever the case may be. Once we've helped them with the focus, the next stage is to break that focus into the smallest possible steps and assign weekly to-do lists that we collaborate on creating between the manager, the leader, and the team member. So that they're, as I said to you earlier, they're sharing this. It's a co-creative process. They're coming up with ideas. The more the ideas that they come up with, the more likely they are to carry them through. Rather than simply being told what to do. And then rather than telling them what they've missed, suggest what they might need to consider. Now imagine a scenario that your team now is, your individual team member is crystal clear about what he or she wants, why it's important to them, and they know that they have exact control over every individual step that's going to get them there. What happens to their confidence?
Oh, gee, skyrockets. Yeah.
Exactly. And in today's world, when they're facing isolation and on their own, that is hugely important. Because they will convey that confidence to everybody, and this is the next C, they communicate with. So they'll be more convincing, they'll be more congruent, they'll be more engaging with people, whether they're colleagues, stakeholders, clients, whatever. And ultimately what that leads to is an improvement in your competence or your performance. So it's critical at the moment that leaders learn to develop clarity, the motivation, and the process to give people a greater sense of control and confidence.
Hey, listen, those of you who've stuck with us to the end of this, if that wasn't worth the price of admission, then I don't know what I can do for you. Love that model. And it was surprising to me because, we've been talking the whole half hour that we shouldn't be control. You threw the control word in and I thought, okay, is that model out of date? But it's about personal control, isn't it? And giving people that sense of, actually, I am in control. I can do this. And that's where that confidence comes from. They communicate it with other people and bang, your team's flying again. And
now you control the environment. The environment's no longer controlling you.
Love it. Love it. Listen, I don't think we're going to do better than that as advice to people who are listening. Sean, thanks again for your time. And thank you. I know you're busy and appreciate you taking a bit of time to talk to us. And of course, anybody who's interested, either obviously if they feel that executive coaching is for them and they kind of enjoyed how you've positioned yourself there, that may be an option, because now it can be anywhere in the world, right? That is the one brilliant.
And we work globally online now, so
yeah, brilliant.
Where you are.
But then of course, from September 2020 as well, if you are interested in the type of methodologies, and of course in half an hour, Sean's only given us a tiny tip of the iceberg of what he does and how he does it. If you're interested in connecting in, get in touch with Sean and find out what he does and what the Academy is about and how you can get value from it. Sean, thanks so much. Any final word to you, my friend? Last word, even in Irish, if you want.
Always a pleasure, my friend. And the one stage we did share was in 2013 when we were both given our Hall of Fame Professional Speaking Award of Excellence from the Professional Speaking Association of the UK and Ireland. So that was a definite stage we shared.
That I had forgotten that it was you and I got that in the same year. That was a good stage to be on. Thanks again, my friend. Good luck. Thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that.